Welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors from the Open Season Property Studio, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi because we live in the capital of the outdoors in America. It's January the 9th, 2024. We're still in the heart of hunting season with duck season going full bore right now. And of course, we're in a mostly a post-rut scenario in lots of the areas across Mississippi. But the hunting's been great. We finally got some cold weather. It's been terrific. And as I say every week, so many of us look forward to this time of the year. But you know what? I look forward to the summertime when we're going offshore, and I look forward to September and October when we're doing improvements up in the Delta, getting ready for hunting season. And I just enjoy the camaraderie. I enjoy being out there, watching the sunrises and the sunsets, and being with great friends, and getting back to the part of our culture that so many of us are connected to. And that's when politics don't matter. That's when nothing else really matters but being out there experiencing it. And I can't get enough of it. Listen, last week I had a terrific show with Thad Miller, who is a principal with Open Season Properties. As I mentioned during the show, part of the deal, they actually sponsor the studio. And part of the deal is he is not to promise that he will be on my show, but here's the deal: the more I learned about Thad and what he's up to in his land management efforts, and he's an avid hunter, I wanted to have him on the show and hear his story. And it was a great conversation. So if you missed it, you can go to your favorite podcast or to YouTube or Facebook to the Super Talk Outdoors page and take a listen. I think you'll be glad you did. I've got a great show today with someone I really enjoy spending time with. He's been a regular on this show, and I'm assuming he's going to stay a regular. But my friend Pierce Young from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, he's involved in the private lands program there. And he's just kind of a jack of all trade when it comes to land management and wildlife management and so on. He also just loves the outdoors. Pierce, how you doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
Well, it's good to see you. Look, Pierce is in his truck for people who are not watching on SuperTalk TV or YouTube or Facebook. And the reason he is because just as he's about to do the show, he decided to do a little bit of work. And so he's in his truck. We've actually talked to him in his truck before because he's out and about across the state of Mississippi. And I don't know what it is about you, Pierce, when you're remote in your truck like you are now, the picture is beautiful and the sound quality is terrific. So you're just a lucky guy.
Yeah, very lucky in that respect. Not always that lucky with technology, but it'll be good. Headed to meet with a landowner here pretty shortly. Getting the season kicked off really for us.
Pierce, I want to talk to you about controlled burns because I think one of the big stories coming out of California is that they have not done a good job of dealing with what's called wildland interface with the urban situation, and it's been an ongoing situation there. In Mississippi, I think I remember this number right, over 200,000 acres a year we do controlled burns in, and I would say Mississippi is the best practice for our nation in terms of managing the forest fuel. I want to talk to you about that. But before we go there, how's your season been? I know you enjoy hunting with your kid. Tell me more about, how's it been for you?
Yeah, it's been good. Been a good year. Been able to get out with my daughter, do some deer hunting, some squirrel hunting. She's 5. She doesn't carry a gun yet, but she loves going, and getting out there and enjoying it. And we put some meat in the freezer. So it's been good. I've been hearing a lot of good stories from all over the state, but especially central Mississippi. Seems to be a good year for most people.
Yeah, it has been. Of course, that's where I hunt, up in the Mississippi Delta, and it's been a phenomenal year. Lots of deer. William McKinley and I talked about this, and for people who are regulars, you know who William McKinley is, but if you don't, he's the head of the deer program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and a dedicated leader and someone who's known across the nation really for his wildlife, more specifically, whitetail deer management efforts. Love having him on the show. But one of the things he talked to me about early in the season, with the drought impact on the acorn crop, we were going to see a lot more deer on food plots. And listen, when I went to BB's in the deer processor in Greenwood early in the season, Listen, Pierce, I have never seen that many deer coming in at one time. And I want to say this might have been probably somewhere around opening weekend, somewhere in that range, within a week or two of opening weekend. I've never seen so many deer coming in, and I think that's evidence that when you don't have a great acorn crop, and I know that it was down substantially, it really put a lot of focus and pressure on the need for food sources like food plots. But you've really seen that across the state, haven't you?
Absolutely, absolutely, especially in central Mississippi, which is what I'm more familiar with. But I've been hearing it everywhere. Acorn crop, both the white oak, red oak, has not been all that great. The people that did have white oaks early, they got ate up pretty quick. Food plot conditions, weather and everything cooperated fairly well. Early rains, good soil moisture. It got a little dry in October for anyone planting late, but then we got some good time rains late too. So kind of a perfect storm. We've had, other than the drought last year, we had at least 5 good fawning years. So the conditions for number of deer being produced and quality deer coming up, they're starting to get older now. So it's kind of a perfect storm this year. It's coming together good.
I tell you, one of the things that we have seen on the farms that I hunt on, and from Chula, they range from Chula up to Minter City, has been a lot of 3-year-olds. I mean, we're seeing a lot of 3-year-olds. So we've been passing on a lot of deer. And of course, the theory is that if you don't pass on them, you're never going to see the big deer. And if you decide not to pass on them because you don't think your neighbor's going to, you become your neighbor. You become your neighbor. I mean, we had a beautiful drop tine deer at one of our properties last year that my son had passed on it the year before. I videoed the heck out of it last year. We passed on it like crazy. It was for sure a 3.5-year-old. Our neighbor killed it and then told everybody it was a 6-year-old. So even though I had pictures and videos and whatever, but you know what, if he's happy, I think his son killed it, but if he's happy, that's fine. That's kind of the
Yeah,
way the world is. But I think our management efforts overall across the state has improved dramatically, and within that success story is also the reality that we all have to do a better job of helping to manage the herd. I mean, that's a big topic inside the department these days, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely, and that's the big reason we get so busy this time of the year. As deer season's winding down, and we get a bunch of online applications for site visits because everyone's thinking about next year and trying to get us on the property to look before turkey season gets ramped up. And so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Somebody sent me some pictures the other day, and it was a bunch of coyotes around a feeder, and they had not seen a bunch of coyotes around a feeder in a while. And the question they asked was, "Do you think that they're literally hunting the feeder?" And I said, "Yes." It's a very good chance that they have figured that out, which is one of the problems with feeders, that it has a way of congregating, um, you know, those creatures that want to eat some of the wildlife that we enjoy, like turkey, for example. But
That's
that's
right.
another story. Hey, listen, let's come back to the point I made a few minutes ago. The We'll start this and then we'll pick it up on the other side. But man, we cannot overemphasize how important, for so many different reasons, prescribed burns are.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. This time of year, we're having a lot of discussions helping people make burn plans for their property. A lot of people like to burn February, early March timeframe. It's a lot easier. You can get, especially if we get drier conditions, to get things burn because you don't have all that fresh vegetation yet. But it makes a world of difference if first you got to get sunlight on the ground for vegetation to respond. But once you do, you got to be able to manage that, or it's just going to be taken back over by sweet gums or ash or trees or something like that. So maintaining that, getting that new growth response, important for many wildlife species. Deer, turkeys, but all the non-game, it very important.
Yeah, I was very, very compelled to think even more about it after having Shannon Clardy on from the U.S. Forest Service and to really understand the master plan that they have in place to do controlled burns across the state. Is very, very impressive. And it's a best practice. And it's one that California ought to pay attention to. And it's not bad for the environment. It's good for the environment. It creates more new food and habitat, and it also takes some of the forest fuel out of the woods. That is for sure. Hey, when we come back,
Absolutely.
we're going to talk a little bit more about the private lands program. Find out what do you do this time of year as folks put in their applications and they start to work with folks. We're gonna get into some of those details with Pierce Young when we come back. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Open Season Property Studios. Listen, Open Season Properties is a full-service real estate company that is really focused on a team approach philosophy that ensures your needs are the highest priority, whether it's rural land sales, residential, or commercial properties. Open Season Properties markets and sells real estate in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Georgia. And they're dedicated to the development of long-term client relationships and have an unwavering commitment to service. Go to openseasonproperties.com to learn more. We're thrilled to have Open Season Properties as the studio sponsor here of Super Talk Outdoors. Now let's get back to Pierce Young, who's deeply involved in the private land program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks here in Mississippi. Is someone I enjoy spending time with. I follow him closely actually, and you've got a growing list of people who follow you, Pierce, because you are regularly posting about subjects that help educate people about how to improve their land and their wildlife experience. And you seem to really enjoy it, and people are connected to that. So it's something that I'm sure it's something that comes natural to you, but it's got to be good to see the response that you're getting.
That's right. I've been working with our media department, with our private lands program, for a while, getting some of that information, through the agency's page, and then I never did social media before, and so to learn, I got on social media and started, posting a lot of relevant information for wildlife managers. I mean, that's the role I'm in, and what I love to do, and I mean, it's social media the way it's supposed to be. I'm able to connect with people who are interested in wildlife management and discuss it with them. Of course, it is social media. You always get some negative stuff out there, but that's just part of it.
Yeah, as my friend Jeff Duncan, who used to work with me when I was president of NOLA Media Group in New Orleans, he works with NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune and joins me every Friday on my other show, the Ricky Matthews Show. What he says is just ignore the comments, just ignore them. But when you're in the business that you're in, you can't. You want to respond to people. You want to interact with them, and I feel the same way. Now, look, I came up as a publisher and digital media CEO. I've seen the worst of the worst and the best of the best as it relates to commenting, et cetera. And what you do over time, you develop a bit of a thick skin. You know what to pay attention to, and in some respects, you know what not to pay attention to. You can't satisfy everybody. That's the reality. And what you're trying to do, very specifically through your programs, help people who own land improve their experience with that land. And if someone's got problems with that, that's their problem.
That's
You
right.
can't address all the negativity. But I don't see much of that, incidentally, in the commenting on your. I mean, it will come up from time to time because some people just are anti-hunting or just unhappy people. That's just the reality of it. But the interchange and the engagement as it relates to your posts is really good. And what I like about your posts, for people who don't follow Pierce Young, you probably ought to look him up, is that you're really sharing a lot of information. I mean, a wide variety of topics, and it's very helpful. So if somebody just wants to get educated and figure out how they can improve their land, you're a good one to follow. Now, look, we got a
That's right.
lot of public land in this state, and I spent a lot of time talking about the public land. In fact, I had a terrific duck discussion recently with Houston Havens, where we literally went through every single public land duck hunting scenario, man, it's unbelievable what our state has done. But we know
Yeah.
this. We're never going to ultimately improve the conservation efforts across our state if we don't also have private land engagement in that conversation as well. So the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks is just as focused on private lands as they are public land, because they know that together we can really make an impact. And you believe that in what you do every day, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, with over 90% of wild animals harvested on private lands every year compared to public, um, it's important. You know, that's where we're going to move the needle with wildlife management in our state is on private lands, and we can't, as an agency, control that. We can only give the information, and that's what we do. We give our experiences, our knowledge, our information, uh, and not opinion. You know, it's facts. What we know. We say it depends a lot. You know, because it does. Some of these situations are complex, and we're not going to try to push anyone's goals. We're going to try to. That's the first question we always ask: is what their goals are on these properties for wildlife, and help them reach those. You know, the best way possible.
And by the way, it's a free service, as if we have emphasized so
Yep.
many times before. What a terrific program, and for it to be free and have access to so many, again, a science-based, biology-based approach. I mean, the topics that you might end up engaging with a private land owner, I mean, it could run the gamut, couldn't it?
Oh yeah, I've been on properties as small as 7 acres, as big as 10,000. You know, deer management in Central Mississippi is the main focus. I think the last time we surveyed 95%, that was their number one goal. But we always ask what the multiple goals are. I've been to places and just worked on pollinator habitat. You know, because that's
Yeah.
what the landowner was interested in, and so we can run the gambit and help with any of those things.
Hey, Pierce, do you get more questions these days about chronic wasting disease?
Yeah, we always get a lot of questions about it. I think people are becoming more informed. There's been a lot of people dealing with CWD up in the North Mississippi CWD zone now for a lot longer, and a lot of those stories, personal stories, are getting out there. I think that hits home to a lot more people that are not in a CWD zone is hearing the stories from the people, the landowners and hunters directly affected by it, and so those are getting out there more as time goes on, and so yeah, it's always a concern. The number always goes up every year as far as number of positives go, and we can't test every single deer in the state. We only get a subsample in where we can, but yeah, it's always a growing concern for sure.
Well, Mike, what I wish we could. What's interesting is there's a lot of old videos on YouTube that people may watch, old videos that have all these different theories about what chronic wasting disease is. What you see more recently, though, as you pointed out, is more people get informed. Even some of the naysayers, as they get informed, they've now, given a nod to the fact that this is real. We don't have a solution for it. The only solution we have is managing it to the best of our abilities. There's a lot of best practices around that we can deploy in the state, and we're certainly doing that now in CWD zones. But the reality is we can slow it down. That's what our goal is, to slow it down and wait for the science to catch up, and eventually the science will catch up. I think what's really important is the work that the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks is doing through the deer program to share data with other states. And so there's a lot of really good objective analysis that's happening across the country now through a central database, where you can begin to kind of really see very clearly, very clearly, on the USDA, right, USDA maps and
Mhm.
other data that comes out of that, other comparative data that comes out of that, where the best practices are, and where some states may be dropping the ball. And those states that have dropped the ball, incidentally, are doing a lot of inward focus right now, because they see the impact of CWD when it gets to a high level of prevalence, is that you essentially don't see any mature bucks anymore, and that's one of the problems, and it is a very, very significant threat to white-tailed deer hunting in the country, and it's one that we have to stay focused on in Mississippi to do everything in our power to reduce the prevalence. And that, I mean, that's about as, I mean, you probably said what I just said 100 times or 1,000 times. Have you, Pierce?
Absolutely. It's a very complex disease. It's, and it's very hard to talk about something that's complex and something we're always finding new information about every year because people don't like complex. I mean, I don't like complex. Yeah, I'd rather have a simple answer to things, personally. But unfortunately, it's not. And so complicated diseases, come with complicated answers and questions. But it's definitely something we know now, that there are management practices that can at least slow it down, slow the spread. Um, and if you do other things, non-management type things, it can get worse a lot quicker, and that's what we want to avoid. And hopefully, some better solution, better information comes along.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. When we come back on the other side, what does the private lands program for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks do in late winter as you're not only beginning to work with new clients, but also the clients that you've got now? We're thinking about how do you evaluate the population, what are habitat conditions we need to think about, how do we help with post-rut recovery, and so on. So we'll talk a lot about that when we come back on the other side with Pierce Young from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I hope you're having a great day, and I really appreciate you joining us from the Open Season Property Studio. Listen, if you're looking to purchase the perfect piece of hunting property, upgrade your farm equipment, or have you been dreaming of owning your slice of heaven out in the country, look no further than Mississippi Land Bank for your financing needs. For more than 100 years, farming families and landowners in North Mississippi have turned to Mississippi Land Bank for all kinds of financial solutions, whether it's for land, equipment, or livestock. For more information, visit mslandbank.com or go by and see one of their friendly staff at any of their offices, like some of my friends did who bought some land. And we really love having Mississippi Land Bank as one of the sponsors for Super Talk Outdoors. Now let's move back over to my friend Pierce Young, who's with the Private Lands Program for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And as I teased before we went to break, the private lands program is doing a lot of important work, but this time of year, late winter, people are still hunting. Just this morning, I was having conversations with some of the guys who hunt with me about, we got a terrific bulldozer guy that we work with to create new roads, to clean up and do maintenance on roads, to build new food plots and so on. And he's a hunter too, incidentally. So it's great when you have a bulldozer operator who's also a hunter that can help you get it set up in a certain way. But we're already having those conversations. One of the things I like to do is walk the property toward the end of the season and see what some of the deer patterns are that you don't necessarily see at the beginning of the season. But these are the kind of conversations that you're having with probably 100 more items stacked on top of it. What does a private lands program look like in late winter?
Yeah, we've covered some of the things we do this time of year, but when we do get on a property with a site visit, one thing we're always looking out for is browsing intensity on certain plants. Late winter is a stressful time of year for deer. They're coming out of the rut. They're about to shed their antlers and start growing a new set back, which happens, typically before spring. So looking at the plants like greenbrier, blackberry, dewberry, the ones that are still around that deer really rely on as maintenance forage for late winter, and I'm trying to see how pressured those plants are. It's a good time to show that to the landowner because there's a lot less plants you have to look at compared to like the late summer stress period where there's a lot more plants to look at. We look at different things, so it's a lot easier to determine and showcase, where the deer herd's at compared to the amount of food they have, in late winter. Another thing landowners can do during this time to kind of see that same thing is putting exclosure cages, wire cages in their food plots to be able to see that. I this time of year on high pressure properties, where the plants are eaten down, to the ground. I like to tell landowners, like, if deer didn't have lips, it would be lower. Like you need to shoot more does. So that's one thing we're looking at. We actually have a nice little valuation booklet, pocket guide on our website that people can download, or they can contact us to get those booklets to look at all the plants and what it means as far as doing a browse survey on their own property. But we can do that through free consultation as well. So that's a lot of what we're doing right now. As January and for South Mississippi, as middle of February wraps up, we're going to be talking to a lot of our DMAP properties about getting the jawbones from that they've collected all season with the data. Start collecting all that, aging the jawbones, talking to them about that, getting all that data to our office to start inputting, and then, like we mentioned, getting ready for burning. Those are probably the three biggest things coming up right now for us. This is probably our busiest time of the year for sure.
I love the way you said that if a deer didn't have lips, they would eat it down even further. That's
Right.
so true. Listen, I immediately think about one of our properties is it's 2.3 miles on a river, but it's only well, I say only, it's 250 acres along a river. So it's in a bow. So it's just holding a lot of deer, and it's surrounded by farmland. On the other side, there's also some bottom land, but there's also a lot of farmland on the other side. And so, if you were to go to our property right now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 food plots. We're going to add 2 more food plots in the coming year. But, buddy, they are eaten to a nub.
Mm-hmm.
So what I just heard you say, if you were to walk our property with us, you would immediately say, you don't even need to see pictures of deer or see deer. You can look at it and tell that there's
Right.
too much browse pressure. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize that half of a deer's diet is browse plants. Most of the year, it's going to be 40-50% of their diet. But late winter, it can be as high as 70% of their diet, depending on what else they have available. And even if you have high quality food plots that are providing high protein, through those plants, you're only doing that for half their diet. So if the other half of their diet is cedar branches or holly or things they can't process very well, their diet is being held back from being able to process all those good high protein plants. So they're going to be held back. Their body weights are going to be held back. Their antlers are going to be held back. All of that is suppressed if you don't have everything working together.
We've got we do a 5-way that's cereal rye, wheat, let's see, and 3 kinds of clover, and then we top it. Excuse me. We top it with more wheat, and we're trying to get about 150 pounds per acre. Essentially, is what our goal is. Somewhere between 100 and 150 pounds of seed per acre. And the food plots are nice. We're using a no-till drill on most of our plots. On a couple of the places we do old school. I kind of still like old school, even though what we found with as far as when you get the rain works for you and everything works fine. I like looking out at that carpet. I love seeing that. But when we use the no-till drills this year, actually, we went through a couple of times so we could create that effect. What I found about the no-till drill that we really like is that, especially under some kind of drought conditions like we've had, you can get the seeds down a little bit further, and they tend to be a bit more protected. They come up a little bit quicker. So, do you have a preference?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. I see pros and cons of both. I've definitely been seeing a lot more of the pros with the no-till, but with no-till, it's to start seeing those benefits. I mean, you really got to swap and get things going for multiple years. typically the first couple of years, people are kind of wondering, is this really going to work? Because it doesn't look as good as their conventional
Yeah.
food plots. But after 3, 4, and 5, when all those other processes that you're trying to change through doing the no-till start kind of building back, then you start seeing those gains. You get better moisture control, deeper roots, which
Yeah.
deeper roots also, those plants can take browsing pressure better. So there are some benefits of doing the no-till, but it's you almost got to shift and take it long term to start seeing those benefits.
Hey, here's the other thing that we have found is that so we spray everything, but if we don't, okay, the good thing about when you go in there and turn the soil is that you can spray, and if something's starting to come back up again, you can pretty much kill it again when you go in there and cut the soil again.
Hmm.
Then you plant and fertilize and do the things you need to do, and those food plots tend to be just gorgeous. With no-till, you can spray, but see, you're not coming through cutting the soil again.
Right.
So it's if there's a gap there, then and you've got warm weather like we had this year, where it gives the weeds and all a chance to kind of grow back up again. You got to be a little bit more aggressive with the weed control, don't you?
Yeah, more aggressive, or change the chemicals that you use. With tillage, a lot of times you can till early, use Roundup, which is going to be the most economical compared to a selective herbicide that you can spray over active crops. That won't kill certain crops and will kill the weeds that you want to kill. Those are going to be more expensive. But there's like I said, pros and cons both ways. Many ways to do it. Really, I like to think of no-till as more of a spectrum. There's some people that want to go no herbicide, no fertilizer. There's a certain way to do that, and there's others that it's complete opposite. Using the herbicides, which will typically get where you want to go a lot quicker, and using the fertilizers to get you there a lot quicker too.
Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Pierce Young from the Private Land Program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks here in Mississippi, and continue the conversation. We'll see you after this. Hey, welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Open Season Property Studios. Listen, in a world where honesty and dependability are rare, Austin Seals and Jordan Blissett of Open Season Properties stand out with their commitment to integrity and hard work. With a background in agriculture science, marketing, and hunting land development, this team offers a real service that you can rely on when buying or selling real estate. Whether it's your family property or your first piece of ground, they understand the significance of every transaction, specializing in recreational land, poultry farms, investment properties, farm and timberlands, and more. They are here to meet all your real estate needs. Give Austin Seals and Jordan Blissett at Open Season Properties a call today and experience the difference. We're thrilled to have Austin and Jordan as sponsors here at Super Talk Outdoors. We're talking with Pierce Young, who's in the Private Lands Program for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And we were just talking before we went to break about whether you cut the soil, turn the soil the old school way, or whether you use a no-till drill. And I just want to mention one other thing. My friend Terry on some adjoining land, he did some investigating and experimenting. Let's put it that way, with some summer plots, and man, they came up beautifully. And he got deer pictures and plots that would have not been before nothing but just weeds, and might have provided some bedding area, but the deer kind of was in them all summer long. And then what they did is they ran the no-till drill through that. So they, they didn't try to cut it down. They just ran it right straight through that. Some of that stuff was 5, 6 feet tall. And then they planted and it grew back. My son Jordan said, Dad, what would be interesting to just leave the summer plot just how it is, and go in there and just broadcast seeds into it, and just because you'd have cover, potential bedding area, and then you'd also have some food plot that would work as well. But I bet this is a conversation you have as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Depending on what equipment people have or anything like that, you can do it many different ways, like we were talking about before. But I do talk a lot about balancing food plots with landowners, trying to have equal portions of the different types. And when I say different types, I mean winter annuals, some perennials like white clover, and then summer annuals as well, because there's an overlap. And typically the most stressful times for deer especially is in these overlap periods, late winter, early spring, and then also late summer, early fall, especially late summer, early fall. So with the summer food plots, and that can be anywhere, even in the Delta where you have thousands of acres of soybeans, that at some point, they're going to harvest those soybeans, so even a property in that landscape could benefit from having some summer food plots. And then I always like to recommend, whether they drill into them or just designate some spots and do some top sowing, broadcasting into them in the fall, to leave those summer crops there until the frost kills them. And then you can have something coming up within them, either drilling or broadcasting, like a clover. I like recommending crimson clover a lot, for that purpose. But that gives a good transition. That gives the animals what they need when they need it at these key times, and you don't have a gap when they really need, especially these high protein plants, when they need them. You don't have a gap in those transition periods.
Listen, you mentioned transition period, but one of the most important ones is one we're about in right now in very significant parts of the state, and that's post-rut recovery. But given the stress, I mean, one of the things that William pointed out to me is that when a deer starts to use the fat in its body, it turns yellow, and otherwise it's white and thick, and the white and thick tends to be what we see in the Mississippi Delta. But in other parts of the state, he said he was beginning to see yellow way earlier than we normally see it, which is a sign that that the acorn crop was down, et cetera. So when you add that to the realities that already exist as it relates to post rut recovery in general, deer might be a little bit more stressed right now.
Absolutely, especially bucks. I would say it's a lot more stressful in late summer for a doe when she's nursing. But right now, it's this buck stress period. I mean, they're coming out of the rut. If buck to doe ratios are skewed and you don't have all your does being bred when they first come into estrus at peak rut, they can come back in to estrus 28 days later, and those bucks are still going to chase. And on average, a buck will lose 25 to 30% of his body weight. And in order to maximize antler growth, he has to recover his body weight back to a minimum first. Body weight always takes priority over antlers in a buck's physiology. And so he's got to recover 25 to 30% of that body weight before he can start putting extra in the antler growth. Well, typically in Mississippi, those antlers are shedding in February and starting to heal and grow back at that time. So they got to recover pretty quick. And that's where having clovers and high protein plants late winter can really help with that.
Yeah, we again, I said we did 3 different kinds of clovers, and hopefully it helps in that regard. Listen, Pierce Young, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, my friend.
Absolutely, always enjoy it.
This has been Pierce Young from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Look up their private lands program. I think you'll be glad you did. You can find it at their site. Listen, always put safety first. I end every show with that. Don't assume a gun is unloaded, man. Check it yourself. Make sure those breeches are open. Don't let a mistake happen that can change your life forever. Put safety first. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.